On January 8, 1969, George Harrison brought "EMI Mine" into Twickenham Film Studios, explaining that he had written it the previous night.
All through the day, I'm in mine, I'm in
The musical spark came from a television program he had watched, where a piece of European-style music caught his attention and led him toward the song's uneasy waltz rhythm. Its subject was not a particular romance, person, or fictional event. It was Harrison writing about the human ego, the part of people that constantly thinks about personal wants, possessions, status, and importance. His interest in Hindu philosophy had taught him to see that smaller sense of self as something people needed to overcome. Although the title sounds almost childishly simple, it was Harrison's way of reducing selfishness to 3 blunt words. And the timing made the song feel especially pointed. The Beatles had entered the Get Back project hoping to rehearse new material, return to some live performances, and let cameras document the whole process. But instead, George was becoming frustrated with the group's old habits and with the limited attention given to his growing collection of songs. He would temporarily leave the band only 2 days after introducing "EMI Mine." Harrison never presented it merely as a complaint about John and Paul, so it should not be treated as a straightforward attack on them. Still, the real arguments and bruised egos surrounding its creation are difficult to ignore. The song's larger subject was human self-importance, but George happened to write it while trapped in a room full of some of the most famous and forceful personalities in the whole world, and the film rehearsal produced one of the strangest scenes in the Beatles' final chapter. While George, Paul, and Ringo worked through the song, John and Yoko danced around the studio to its waltz rhythm. It may have been playful rather than deliberately insulting, but the sight of George presenting a serious song about ego while John dances with Yoko gives the moment a little awkward comedy that no screenwriter could have planned. And director Michael Lindsay Hogg kept the sequence in the finished Let It Be film. And that created a small practical problem, because "EMI Mine" appeared prominently in the movie, yet at the time the Beatles had never made a proper studio recording of it. The song ended up on the album largely because its unfinished rehearsal had already become part of the film. On January 3, 1970, nearly a year after the Twickenham rehearsal, Harrison, McCartney, and Starr reunited at EMI Studios to record it. At the time, John was in Denmark with Yoko and had already privately told the others that he was leaving the group. So the remaining 3 Beatles completed 16 takes, with George playing guitar and singing, Paul handling bass and keyboards, and Starr on drums. And before one of the takes, Harrison jokingly delivered a fake announcement that treated Lennon's absence as though the Beatles had casually changed their lineup and identity. But beneath the humor was an uncomfortable truth. The 4-man Beatles were effectively finished. So "EMI Mine" became the last new Beatles song recorded before the breakup, and it was made without the member whose songwriting partnership had once dominated nearly every album. Their completed performance lasted only 1 minute and 34 seconds. And when Phil Spector prepared Let It Be for release, he copied and repeated part of the recording, adding 51 seconds without asking the Beatles to play anything new. He then covered the expanded track with strings, brass, harp, extra drums, and a female choir, turning the small 3-man performance into a 2-minute 25-second production.
blowing more freely than wine. Oh.
And the finished record shifts between nervous waltz verses and a hard bluesy chorus, as though quiet resentment keeps boiling over. Harrison later used "EMI Mine" as the title of his autobiography, fully aware of the joke in naming a book about himself after a warning against self-importance. And yeah, there really is something almost too perfect about the Beatles' last new recording before their breakup. It was a George song about ego performed by only 3 Beatles, and then made longer by repeating the same complaint.